Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. We've got quite a bit to cover today. So we're going to run through our market update. And then I know that since we didn't have market update last week, there's been a lot going on in the mortgage world that has brought up a lot of, how do I put it, clickbaity headlines right out there, including this kind of mortgage tax on those with high credit. So we're going to kind of myth bust a little bit because that's something that actually came out back in January. This is not new. It's just going into effect in May. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about, I know there was a lot of confusion that went out about the 40-year mortgage, which is not a mortgage, it is a modification. And so we're going to go through that, some clarity items around that, and then we're going to talk about what actually is going on as well. But before we get started, I subscribe to a newsletter that's called the 20%er. I highly recommend it. It's by Jay Papasan, who is the author of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, co-author, right, of Millionaire Real Estate Agent Shift, the one thing that just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and plenty of the other books. And he sends out, in my opinion, a great email every single week called the 20%er, which is based on the concept of 20% from the one thing, where they talk about the 80-20 principle, that 80% of our results come from 20% of our activity, that 80% of the income is made by 20% of the agents, which is why they talk about in the one thing how we need to be focused on our 20%. What he shared is actually something called the pot roast principle. So as we start today, I'm going to start off a little different. I want to read through this because I think it was really powerful, and it has spurred a lot of discussions. We had this discussion in our Agent Leadership Council meeting, in our class on Friday as well. He starts off with a quote that says, "The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it," by Henry David Thoreau. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. The email goes on to talk about the pot roast principle and inflation. The tale goes like this. A new bride is preparing a pot roast for dinner. She carefully crops off a few inches from each end before putting the pot roast in the pan to brown. Her husband asks why she's trimming away so much. "It's Grandma's famous recipe," she replies. "I don't really know why." So she calls her mom to ask. "Well, that was what Mom always did," says her mom. Finally, they get Grandma on the phone. Grandma explains, "My casserole pan was too small." Versions of this story go back at least 30 years. The moral is always to explore the status quo and not do things by rote. Call it the pot roast principle. But rules and standards are not always as well thought out as they seem. This came to mind when I learned the origin story of how 2% became the inflation target for economies around the globe. Inflation topped 17% in New Zealand in the 80s. By 1990, inflation lingered above 7%. After reaching out to countries around the world, the New Zealand authorities realized that no one really had a formula for battling inflation. So they asked an interesting question. What if they just proposed a target of 2% and crowds everyone towards it? Reuters recently reported on that critical moment. "It was a bit of a shock to everyone, I think," said Roger Douglas, the Labour Party finance minister at the time. He worked with the Treasury and Reserve Bank of New Zealand to pioneer the policy. I just announced it was going to be 2%, and it sort of stuck. They even came up with a helpful jingle, 0 to 2 by 92, to rally the public. Spoiler alert, it worked. Since then, economies around the world have adopted grandma's kiwis recipe for inflation control. So in the role as an economist of choice for your clients, when someone asks why 2%, you can let them know it's pretty arbitrary. And just because 2% works, we may yet find a better target if we stay curious. In the past 2 decades, we've interviewed thousands of top real estate professionals. One trait successful agents share is a healthy skepticism of the status quo. Just because everyone is doing something doesn't make it true. Investigate, be curious, experiment. When our team expanded to St. Louis, our agent Rosalind was told that no one hosted open houses on Sundays. Knowing that open houses on Sundays had worked well for her in the Austin market, Rosalind ignored this unwritten rule and decided to host opens on Sundays anyways. Sellers noticed. They weren't in on the no Sundays policy. So Rosalind stood out as someone willing to go the extra mile. One question to ponder in your thinking time. What aspect of the business have I assumed to be true that just isn't so? Make an impact, J. Papasan. So I wanted to start there, and I really want you to kind of contemplate that question as something, as a lens that we look through, not just as we go over our data, but as we think through this idea of what is it in our business that we assume to be true and just isn't so. And when we had this conversation with the Agent Leadership Council, this concept of the commissions came up, right? Is always charging 2% or 2.5% on commissions when there's actually individuals out there that are getting 7% instead of the 6%, or they're getting a higher amount. Why is it that we always kind of default back to the lower commission, right? Because that's what everybody does. And we see that in the market. When this question was brought up on Friday, one of the things that came up was working to our skill set, right? Just because everybody is cold calling or quote unquote, everybody is door knocking, does not mean that that's the only way to be successful in this business, right? Sometimes database is stronger. Sometimes our own skill set means that we are predisposed to succeed in an area that not everybody is going to do well in. And so I think that's a really interesting question to kind of pose. So again, the question is, what aspect of the business have I assumed to be true that just isn't so? So food for thought as we go in. With that being said, my friends, please remember, we always start out with our TCPA disclaimer. Please make sure that anything you do is done in a TCPA compliant way. All right, looking at Los Angeles County. So we're going to go over kind of our market update overall, but I may share some of the stats that we're seeing across the market as a whole. A couple things to note, because we are looking month over month. So we are looking from March 1st through the 23rd to where we are April 1st through the 23rd of the month when we look at that month over month. And then we're looking at where were we in this same period of time, the 1st through the 23rd, a year ago. We look at the number of properties for sale. We are seeing a decline, right? We are seeing a decline. We saw a decline month over month. We've seen a decline of 4.9% month to date. This is still up significantly from where we are a year ago, up 5.2%. We look at the number of properties sold, right? The number of properties sold. So I'm going to note, this is where we're seeing a little bit different. Last month, from February to March, we saw an increase in the number of properties sold. Thus far, month to date, we are seeing a decline of 12.4%. This is down 41.1% from a year ago. This is a change from what we usually experience in April, right? This is a change from what we usually experience in April. Seasonality has traditionally dictated that we start seeing increase in sales numbers in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the year, right? Increase in activity. That is not the case right now. We are seeing a bit of that decline. Now we'll see where this ends up at month end, but this is going to be a number to watch, especially considering that it is very different from what we typically see at this point of the year. When we look at our inventory trends, right? The number of new listings that have come on the market month to date, down 10.8%, down 39.4% from a year ago. We look at properties pended, down 3.6% month to date, and then down 27.5% from a year ago. So again, not necessarily seeing that kind of uptick that we usually had seen at the beginning of the year, not as big of an uptick, and then we are seeing a decline in the new listings. This, of course, is going to have an impact on supply and demand. This is why one of the things that we are seeing on the market right now, and many of you are experiencing this, is if you are representing on the buyer side, right? There's a lot of cases where we are still seeing these kind of multiple offer scenarios going on. In fact, one of the listings that one of our agents just had about 16 offers on it, right? That's not what was anticipated to happen at this time of the year. And yet, because we're seeing that decline in inventory, it all comes back to supply and demand. When we look at what's happening with our pricing trends, our average active price is up 4.5% month over month. The active price year over year since April of last year is up 16.7%. We look at our average sold price, however, down 5.6% month over month, down 10.2% year over year, right? So a pretty significant decline here. I do want to note, just because LA County is one of the cities that has been looked at as an area where we're starting to see a change in some of the price, I do want to give a little bit of a back view of what we had kind of seen. There's been what they consider a 3-month change in the Los Angeles market that was a decline of about 7%. So I just want to note that across the board, that's a 3-month period of time where we've seen that 3-month change in price. The actual number is about 7.06%. So that's in Los Angeles as a city, as a subset of this Los Angeles County sales trend that we're seeing as well. So I just wanted to note that as well. All right, looking at our absorption rates, right? Looking at our absorption rates, we, as of this month, are at about at this point in the month, so the 1st through the 23rd, we're at about 2 months of inventory, right? A slight increase from where we were at this point last month, and yet still fairly low, right? This is still fairly low when we think about this idea of how much inventory is a lot of inventory. We can look at technical definitions of what is a buyer's market, what is a seller's market, what is a balanced market. What we know is that between 1 to 5 months of inventory is considered a quote unquote seller's market. Does not mean it's not necessarily a good time to buy for a buyer, right? That is kind of a different piece. That's a perception, right? If people think, oh, well, it's a buyer's market or it's a seller's market, that means it's a great time for this particular person. Well, not necessarily, because interest rates come into play. There's a lot of different factors that come into play. But 1 to 5 months of inventory is considered a seller's market. 5 to 7 months is considered a balanced market, and 7+ months of inventory is where we get into a quote unquote buyer's market. So we are still fairly low when we look at the spectrum of how much inventory is currently available in Los Angeles County. Now, when we look at our days on market, down 10%, we are seeing a slight decline in days on market, down to 36 days on market month to date. That is up significantly from a year ago, but still that is a fairly normal days on market here. And then sold versus original list price up slightly. Properties are currently selling at about 98% of list price. But if you notice, right, our average active price, or those list price, has also seen an increase. So we always want to take into consideration the spread between what the sold price is versus what the active or the list price is. And we can see that that is experiencing a little bit of an increase here as well. Okay, moving on over to Orange County, looking at the 1st through the 23rd, number of properties for sale down 4.7%. Down 2% from this same period of time a year ago. We look at properties sold in Orange County. We're seeing month to date a decline of 2.4%. So same as LA County, right? We're seeing a decline here in the number of properties available for sale, as well as the number of properties that are sold, and then a decline of 38.1% from this same time a year ago. What about our inventory trends, right? Our inventory trends, new listings down 19.1%. So again, we're seeing less inventory coming on the market right now, which is what we're seeing in LA. That comes back to supply and demand and the impact that that is going to have on our prices. This again is part of the reason that we are seeing this kind of return to multiple offer scenarios again. When we look at the number of properties pended, a little different from what we saw in LA County, we are seeing a little bit of an increase month to date, up 3.4%, down from the same time last year. I'm going to note, my friends, when we look at the data from a year ago, right? When we look at the data from a year ago, if you remember, one of the things I talked about when I did the full economic update is that we are anticipating that this year, the projections were a significant decline in the number of properties sold, right? This is going to be in terms of just the number of sales that are happening at a national level. We hit about 6.1 million sales last year, right? They were anticipating that this year was going to be somewhere in the fours, right? Somewhere in the fours. That's a big decrease in terms of number of sales. What I do want to note, though, is that the volume, right, our prices have gone up so significantly. And because we're paid on volume, that means that in reality, you could generate the same amount of income this year with less sales transaction. And this is across the board, right? With less sales transaction as what we saw 2 years ago. Why is that important, right? I think part of this is that, one, it can be very easy when we see some of these numbers go down to get discouraged, but we always want to inspect what we're expecting. The second thing is to really win in this market and moving forward is put your focus on units, right? Put your focus on units. When you sustain your units, right? When you sustain your units, you're insulating yourself for the future and will also benefit you in the future as well, right? Because right now, if all we're focused on is our volume or our income, well, you could do less units and still make the same amount of money or still sell the same amount of volume as you have in years past, but that's not sustainable for the future. And so I just want to kind of share that as we start looking at, some of these declines in inventory. The other piece to note is that when we look at year over year, we are going to be in the red almost in every category when we start looking at this year over year data, because that is the projection for this year, right? Is a decline in listings, a decline in sales across the board. So just, again, kind of inspecting what we expect here. We look at our pricing trends. Average active price in Orange County up 5.7%, up 10.4% from a year ago. And then look at this sold price month over month, up 2.4%. So again, I want to note something here. We had a decline in the number of new listings and then an increase in the number of pendants. That impacts the supply that is available. And so then we have an increase in that average sold price. So again, supply and demand is what dictates price, right? Supply and demand is what dictates price. So that's important for us to consider. That's important for us to really look at, right? Okay. And then we can see that it's still a decline from where we were a year ago in terms of that average sold price for Orange County. So looking at our absorption rates, no change here. Still significantly below or low inventory here, less than 2 months of inventory. We're at about 1.3 months of inventory in Orange County. Days on market, seeing a decline similar to what we're seeing in LA County. The difference here being sold versus original list price, we are seeing a 1% decline month to date here in Orange County. So there is kind of that spread, properties selling below what they've been listed for. All right, looking at Riverside County. So getting into, again, one of our lower priced counties here is Riverside County. So again, Riverside County and Riverside as a city is one that has kind of experienced some significant changes. So this is another one that is being monitored on a 3-year cycle. What we've seen is a 3-month change in price, just as we kind of go through the numbers, is going to be a decline of about 4.65%. So we're seeing some significant declines across the board here. So let's go ahead and go through our month-over-month data on sales trends. Number of properties for sale down 10.3%. It's up significantly from a year ago. We look at properties sold down 9.6%, down at 38.4% from a year ago. We look at our inventory trends. Number of new listings down 18.7%, right? So again, a significant decline here in new listings. And then the pendants are up 18.3%. So we're again going to have a little bit of an issue here with that inventory. There's not enough new listings coming on the market to sustain against the amount of properties that are going under contract here. That's fairly even there. In inverse, right? Kind of that inverse even. Okay, average active price. So again, we're seeing that increase up 4.2%, and that average sold price up 7.8%. Supply and demand, right? We don't have enough new listings coming on the market, and there's pendants going in. And so now we have a supply and demand issue that is dictating price. And we see that price reflected in that average sold price for the month at 7.8% increase. We look at our absorption rates, no significant change here. We're at 2 months of available inventory in Riverside County. We look at our average days on market. There's been a decline here of 5.8%, and then no significant change on the sold versus original list price, with the exception of the fact that our base list price, right, our sold price is going up, right, is going up, is seeing an increase, as is the active price here. All right, last county, looking at San Bernardino County. So moving into our lowest price point county, number of properties for sale, seeing a decline of 8.5%. Again, this is not akin to traditional seasonality, where we tend to see an increase in the month of April in terms of the number of properties available for sale. Number of properties sold down 8.7% month over month, a big change from where we were a year ago. We look at our inventory trends, number of new listings coming on the market down 2.8%. However, pendants are up 6.1%. So there are properties going pendant under contract here. We look at our average active price month to date, up 3.6%, and then a little bit of a decline here on that average sold price. That's fairly balanced when we're below 1% change in either direction. That's fairly balanced, but still a 0.7 decrease here as well. In terms of our months of available inventory, this one is the only county right now where we've kind of broken above that 2 months of inventory mark at about 2.3 months of inventory. Still low, right? That's still very, very low in the grand scheme of things from an inventory perspective across the board. And then our average days on market, another decline here, down 21.4%, and a 2.1% increase in sold versus original list price. So a little bit more of a significant increase here in San Bernardino County. All right, my friends. So some of the industry news that I wanted to share today, and my apologies, because I realized that last year, since I was out, we did not have a market update. There was a lot of confusion about a couple of the new mortgage kind of headlines that have been out, kind of clickbaity headlines and things like that as well. If you've been on the internet at all, considering that we're all in real estate, and of course, unfortunately, the way real estate works is and social media works with the algorithms. What that means is that you've gotten a ton of clickbaity articles up and down your feed saying that, hey, there's this new mortgage tax that was implemented on those with high credit. So I want to go over this. There's even some articles that have said, you can unintentionally lower your credit score to get a better deal. That is not true, right? That is not true. So I want to really clarify this. I'm going to show you some charts to kind of explain like what has actually happened in the mortgage industry. The second thing is this went viral here in April. This was actually came out in January. So this is not something that is new or a surprise. This came out in January. It is going into effect across the board as of May 1st. Some lenders, as preparation for this, have already put this in effect. And so there hasn't really been, there's not going to be like a crazy impact on what this looks like. So I want to talk through that. And I've seen some headlines that say things like 620 FICO score gets a 1.75 fee discount or things like that. We're going to kind of break through the myth around this and what this actually looks like. What this actually has to do with is something that are called LLPAs, which is loan level price adjustments. These are specific to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which in reality, those two entities or agencies guarantee a vast majority of new mortgages that are coming on. And LLPAs, or these loan level price adjustments, are based on loan features such as credit and loan to value ratio, right? So this happened in January. What ended up, there's and again, right, I'm not here to say if this is a good or a bad thing. I just want to kind of share what's actually happened. Okay, so the confusion becomes is that when there is a loan, right? When you have a loan, there's going to be certain, you get a rate, right? A loan rate. And what ended up happening, the question became, is somebody with low credit going to pay less than a high credit borrower, right? That seems to be kind of the biggest question that's come up. And that's not exactly what's happening. What happens is there's a change in how loan rates are implemented, what the chart looks like when we look at somebody's FICO score and then we look at somebody's loan to value ratio, which are going to be two factors that are going to affect the rate that somebody is given. The confusion is that people are confusing the change in how the rates are formulated with the actual cost to the buyer, right? So I'm going to show you some charts on what this looks like. To put this in perspective, right, on what this chart is, this is the differences. This is going to be the difference now. So this is no cash out refi. This is a change in cost. Now, what I'm not saying is when we look at this, this is not how this is calculated, right? If you looked at how this was calculated, then you could, let's say, assume that, okay, they're getting an increase in cost, right? Because you see a lot of red here. Red is going to be rising costs. So and I know it's going to be a little bit confusing here, right? But this is the difference in the LLPAs before and after the change. The red is going to indicate a rising cost. Green indicates the falling cost. So you can see here, somebody with 780, right? They've got it. There's a slight decline here, a slight decline here. Loan to value ratio here, there is going to be a little bit of change downwards. Same thing with loan to value ratio, 85 to 90 and 90 to 95. But 95 plus, there's a little bit of a change downward. Now, this next one is for purchases, right? This is going to be for purchases. So again, the red is the rising costs. The green is the falling costs. I can understand that if you were looking at only this chart, you might think, oh, so somebody with a 640 score is going to pay less than somebody with 740. That's not the case, right? Because you're looking here and you're saying, hey, well, 640, everything's in the green. And when we come up here to 740, look at how much is in the red. But this is not the cost change. This is a change to the LLPA. So this next one is going to show you purchases outright, right? What this is going to show is what somebody is actually paying based on their credit score and the loan to value ratio. right? So this is what they're paying based on the credit score and loan to value ratio with the changes now having been implemented. So what we're going to see is, in reality, when we start getting into this higher LTV, right? When you get into this higher LTV, and then based on the credit score over here, you can see where the changes are in the rate itself. This is the new structure, right? This is the new structure. So in reality, why is this happening? Why is there a change? What has happened here? What has happened here? If you have a high credit score, right? If you have a high credit score and a low LTV, you are still gonna, you're still gonna, there's a benefit there, right? There's a benefit. The higher your credit score, the less you pay. That is still accurate, right? What has changed is that the gap between what somebody who has a lower credit score and somebody has a higher credit score, the gap has shrunk. The gap has shrunk. And the way they have shrunk that gap is that they've made changes on both ends of the spectrum. They've bumped up, if you've got a lower credit score, they've bumped that up a little bit. And if you've got a higher credit score, they've, in some instances, not all of them, because again, this is the actual changes, right, is over here. In some instances, then it's gotten a little bit of a bump down, right? And so that gap in terms of what somebody is paying based on their credit score has decreased a little bit. It's kind of that delta. And it's taken from both sides of the spectrum. But what that doesn't mean, because again, that's the change, that doesn't then dictate the cost, right? The cost. So your cost is still lower the higher your score, right? The higher your score. So why was this change made, right? Why was this change made? And I'm not here to talk politics on whether this was a good thing or whether this was a bad thing. Everybody can have their own opinion on that. I just want to clarify what actually happened here. But what is important to understand is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, their mission is to promote affordable homeownership, right? That's their mission. And so right now, we know that as a result of inflation, as a result of a lot of the things that have been happening with our economy, the biggest issue that we are currently facing in the housing industry right now, there's two pieces that have been really troublesome. The first is affordability, right? The first is affordability. Affordability, somebody being able to purchase a home, right, and make the payments is honestly been incredibly impacted by inflation and by the increase that we've experienced in terms of what that looks like from a payment perspective, right, for somebody. And so this is one of the reasons that they've kind of implemented this change, is in an attempt to increase affordability, especially those that do have lower credit scores, by kind of closing up that gap in interest payment. So this is what happened. This is where there's some clarity around it. But I think the biggest thing to talk to your clients about, because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of information that's out there. It's always important that we inspect what we expect. And we hear a lot of the information that's out there. Always make sure, and I'm going to note that my source for this information right now, if anybody's interested in going and seeing the article, is Mortgage News Daily, that is pulling information straight from FHFA, which really kind of oversees the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So there's a source for the information. I think that's what's really important, is there's a lot of articles that have been out there, and even the news reporting on these things, and they are reporting it in such a way that is very confusing, right? It can be really confusing across the board. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity around this. The second thing that I wanted to make sure we touched on today, because I also saw a lot of misinformation about this last week, and from major news sites, right? I saw some major news sites reporting about this new 40-year FHA loan. There is not a new 40-year FHA loan. And so I saw people sending this out to clients. I saw clients kind of calling and saying, hey, I want the 40-year program because it's showing up on all the news sites. This was all over. This is a modification program, right? This is a modification program. So this is not that anybody can go and just get a 40-year FHA loan program. This is specifically a modification that was issued back in March, right? Back in March, for those that are dealing with COVID-19 specific situations, right? And so if you have clients that are asking you about a 40-year mortgage, what I do want to note is this: while there may not be a 40-year FHA loan modification, 40-year mortgages do exist. That is a thing, right? That is a thing. Just this program that everybody's been talking about, again, there was kind of like a delayed reaction to this news before it all went viral, because this was back in, this came out back in March is when it was finalized, but it's not coming into effect until May. So April has been kind of the breeding ground for all of these kind of things that are now going viral all over the internet. With that being said, there are 40-year loan programs. Downey Capital has one. You can talk with them about it. Does it mean it's going to be the right thing for your client? Not necessarily, right? So one of the reasons people like 40-year mortgages is because they anticipate that the payment is going to be lower, which from an affordability factor can be a good thing, right? For somebody to do that. The other piece of that is you've got an extra 10 years that you're paying in interest. That is a lot of money paid out over that additional 10 years. And so it's important for your clients to have an understanding of what it actually means when they are kind of looking at some of these different mortgage products that are out there as well. It may be something that creates affordability, not this modification, but an actual 40-year loan program. Might be something that can increase affordability for your clients. And I would look at making sure they have a kind of plan of action to maybe refi out of it, or ways to decrease that life of their loan over time. So with that being said, I do want to bring your attention. I know we have a couple of the smart plans that are available. The one that I think is really good right now, right? When we think about what is happening right now, and all this information that is coming out about mortgages and the 40-year loan program and, the rate changes right now is a really good opportunity to speak to the message of the moment. If that's what's going viral and that's what your clients are asking about, why not offer them something of value to them? Something that's on their mind right now. Right now is a really easy time to call clients and saying, hey, I want to clarify some of the things that are going on based on the news. I wanted to answer any questions you might have about mortgages, right? And some of the news that's been out there. And let me clarify some of these things. And as part of that conversation, you can now ask a question like, you know what? I've put together a series of emails that actually explains all the different mortgage hacks or loan programs that could exist that might be beneficial for you. Would you be interested in receiving that? Would that be of value to you, right? This is a conversation opportunity. That's a call to action on a social media post, right? It's a call to action on a text message is, would it be of value to you to learn more about the actual mortgage hacks that exist to increase affordability for you? And then you can put them on this mortgage hacks email series, right? For buyers. If you look it up in the library, this is exactly what it's called. You can find it on my name, or you can find it here. It's 2 smart plans. What they look like is every single piece is going to have mortgage hacks at the top. It's going to see, hey, this is this is actually not the first email. This is, I think, the second email here. But what it goes through is it'll actually put your client's name, and it's going to educate them about different opportunities for mortgage hacks to increase affordability. This first one talks about buy downs, and it literally has charts that are here built out to give samples to educate your clients, right? To educate your clients. So that is a tool that is there for you. I just think right now, considering a lot of the mortgage conversation that's out there, this is an incredibly relevant tool that you can be using for your business. With that, my last announcement for the day is we do have our team meeting. I want to make a note for everyone. We usually meet on Tuesdays. This is on Wednesday, right? We're going to be meeting on Wednesday, April 26th. It's going to be 3 p.m. here in the office. We have some really interesting announcements about a new division we are opening up to increase opportunities for income for you, as well as a great follow-up for your past clients. We also said Fiesta Edition, wear your best Fiesta attire. Some of you may not know, we've been playing around with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT helped us write a song about mortgages. And so we want to do a cool video that will give you a follow-up tool that you can actually send out to your clients come Cinco de Mayo, which is why we're celebrating a little bit early. So really excited, cannot wait to see you all there this Wednesday at 3 p.m. With that, I hope you all have an absolutely phenomenal rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Of course.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.